Hey guys, as you're watching this video, our vision is to reach 500,000 subscribers. Hit the subscribe button, join membership to support our channel, join Patreon and PayPal. All the links are in the description. Do that to stand with us for this beautiful cause of One Africa right now. We do not forget to sign up for the petition. The link is down below. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I am a boy born and raised in a rural village in Botswana with a typical childhood like that of every other child. Most of us, most of the children of this country were born and raised in the most humble of circumstances. Some obviously in less than humble circumstances. I am part of that cohort of children raised in this country. Walked like all of them to school, studied, went from primary school to secondary school in the same village that I was born and raised in, finished primary school and came to town for the first time after serving 1 year of national service in some other very remote part of the country. And having finished that, went to the University of Botswana, where most of the children of this country went, and I studied law there. Finished and then practiced for a few months before going back to the university as what was called a staff development fellow, which was a pathway to becoming a lecturer. I then went to study in the United States at Harvard Law School and returned to teach law at the university for about 10 years in academia, after which I left and went into full-time private practice. I practiced largely in the area of public law, doing human rights, criminal defense work. Encountered violations of people's rights, abuses here and there, which strengthened my resolve, not only to defend these rights in the courts, but also to find a way in which I could assist in preventing the occurrences of violation of people's rights. And that has been the animating impulse for me, not just to be reactive and deal with the violations after they have occurred, but to try and see how we can ensure that they do not take place in the first instance. So that's basically what I've done. I've fought in the courts, I've defended human rights, I've advocated, and ultimately I felt the best way to carry the advocacy forward was to venture into the political space. I did. It was a long and arduous road, and happily it has brought me.
There were hurdles along the way.
Many hurdles.
When you look at your growth in politics to be where you are, what were those hurdles and how did you deal with those hurdles?
The first hurdle was, even though I was involved from early days, from my pretty much primary school, secondary school days, through university, in politics, the more active role of leadership was given to me in 2010. And that's when I contested the presidency of the main opposition party, the Botswana National Front. Considered, as I then was, an outsider, because I hadn't been involved in the structures as such. So I was a rank outsider. I had the confidence to step up, contest, and I won and became president of the party, with a mandate to try and bring it together with other opposition parties to create a coalition that would then challenge for power meaningfully, in contradistinction to what had happened before. So that was my main focus, really. That if I succeeded at anything at all, it should be in trying to bring the opposition parties together.
And then you brought the opposition parties together, some of them, with the UDC, and you contested elections. The last time I spoke to you, you had reservations in terms of how the Electoral Commission was conducting its business, but here you are victorious. How did you arrive at this victory?
Well, the victory was a result of a generalized feeling of discontent, disenchantment by the majority of the people of this country. We owe this victory more to that than anything else. But of course, there were other factors that came into play. We were able to present a message that spoke to the existing circumstances, but also offer hope for how the situation can be made better for all the citizens of the country. And a message that we were able to take to all parts of the country, to every citizen as best we could. And that message resonated sufficiently with the citizens. And often the problem is not so much whether you have access, but other competing narratives that keep being flung at you and at the people.
What were those narratives?
When you're in a coalition, first you have different political parties having come together. There are two things that happen at the same time. One is cooperation or collaboration amongst these parties, which is a very good thing, and that's what we want. But there's another attendant issue, which is the one of competition. That the same parties that are in collaboration are also in competition with each other. This competition, properly handled and managed, can be a force for good. But if it is not properly handled, as in instances it became clear that there were challenges in relation to the competition aspect, it can actually result in unnecessary splits, unnecessary fights, and a waste of time on frivolity and trivia. And so we experienced that throughout the solidification of the UDC. We had, at the beginning, the Botswana National Front, the Botswana People's Party, and a party that was called the Botswana Movement for Democracy, which was a splinter group of the ruling Botswana Democratic Party. We went into the 2014 elections solid as a unit. In 2014, the UDC literally began to hold together about 3 months before the elections. But even with that, it did spectacularly. And we were able to get almost 20, if not 20 exactly, seats for the first time in the Parliament of Botswana. And so what remained to be done then after the 2014 spectacular success was to build on and consolidate in order to then, this opposition bloc, in order to then contest meaningfully for power at the next elections, which would be in 2019. Now we began to experience headwinds. First, the BMD itself split. A new party was formed, Alliance for Progressives. The remaining faction or grouping under the name of BMD also became weak, became disruptive in the coalition, resulting in its expulsion. And so we then were able to woo and bring into the coalition another big opposition party that had chosen in the lead up to 2014 to stay out, which is the Botswana Congress Party. It suffered a devastating loss in the 2014 elections. And then the thinking on my part, and a lot of people within the coalition were opposed to this, that we should not bring in the Botswana Congress Party. I am the only person who fought vigorously to bring the Botswana Congress Party in. They mentioned certain tendencies and practices and traits of this organization that they had seen. But I said it would be a coalition of the wounded. We had done very well, but we had not taken over. They had been decimated at the polls. So we would create here a coalition of the wounded, people who were eager to unseat the ruling party. And so I succeeded in persuading others within the coalition to accept the Botswana Congress Party in. No sooner had they come in than the very issues that they were accused of started surfacing. Dangerous ambition and a spirit of internecine competitiveness that now tended to disrupt the operations of the coalition. We managed these over a long period of time. Then we got to a point where certain actions had to be carried out, suspension of the president and the secretary general of the Botswana Congress Party from the executive committee of the UDC, as a result of which they then left. And so these are some of the challenges that we faced. And the narrative that was then spun and which was sustained until these elections was that I personally was anti-democratic, I was a dictator, and afraid of competition. And I dealt with these accusations in a very factual way, which was, one, a coalition by its nature brings in different parties. The principle that we had agreed on was that we are equals in this coalition. No party is deemed bigger than others. And so because of this, each party was represented at the National Executive Committee of the UDC by 4 members, regardless of the size. And so they wanted an election in the coalition which would determine the leadership of the coalition. And the argument then, which argument holds even now, is if we go to an election and one party, as an example, emerges victorious and has swept all the boards, none of these other parties has any representation in the leadership of the coalition. How then do we proceed to hold the coalition together?
It's not gonna.
It would be a problem. And there were many other issues arising from the very structure of the constitution of the UDC in terms of how to then constitute the delegations to that elective Congress. So all these arguments were then used and a narrative presented that said there was only one person because he was the president, he was afraid of competition, he feared he would lose to his then deputy, and factually that was actually incorrect. It was far from the truth. And I also dealt with this and said, look, because of the dynamics within the coalition, 2 parties had begun the coalition and had anchored it. The Botswana Congress Party was a latecomer. These 2 parties have stood together. And going into any election, these 2 parties would vote together. And they would vote and clean out the BCP. And my fear was not that I would lose. My fear was I would win so massively that the BCP within the coalition would be left without representation in the leadership. And this would adversely affect, negatively affect the coalition. And so this was the argument, and it still is the argument to date. And so they then took the view, they went, so we went into the 24 elections without them. And this is the narrative they sold to the public. Their campaign was constructed around this propaganda about the leader of the president of the UDC being a dictator, the UDC itself being an entity that is not viable. And so, as a proposition to the voter, it was tested and it fared miserably. And that is why the Botswana Congress Party is now the opposition when we should be with them in government. And now the umbrella for democratic change has succeeded, and it won in a very spectacular fashion. So we are pleased with what has happened, but we were also humbled because we appreciate the sentiment on the ground, the expectations, and the challenges that we face now because of the dire economic situation that the country finds itself in.
Let's look at the transition, quite smooth. Now you have to really face the real challenges you pointed out. What are your priorities?
The main priority right now is to turn the economy around. And if you parcel it down further, we are dealing with an economy that is dependent on a single commodity here, which is the mineral diamonds. Diamonds have fared very badly in the market for many reasons. One, the advent of synthetic or lab diamonds. Two, the now costs associated with mining, because we are getting deeper and deeper into the belly of the earth, and a host of other factors. The other one being this ongoing impasse, if you will, between ourselves as the government of Botswana and our other partner in DBS, being Anglo-American.
That impasse, how are you going to resolve this impasse? Because some people are saying perhaps the idea is good as the continent is fighting for beneficiation and better returns, particularly in relation to the value chain. That transformation of how you deal with these people who came to Africa to exploit our minerals, it can't be business as usual. What will be your approach?
Well, it can't be business as usual. And in fairness, it hasn't been business as usual as such. We must appreciate that this venture, mining, involves raising capital to actually do the mining and extract from the ground and take to market in some shape or form. We've been taking to market in the raw and processed. We now are saying we want to get involved in beneficiation in the processing. And there's a whole host of ways in which we get ourselves involved. The main focus is narrowed down by those who look at this to cutting and polishing. And that basically is seen as the be-all and end-all. We need to look at other aspects. Bringing the diamond trading back to Botswana was in and of itself a major step of advance. Did we build on that? That must also be attended by infrastructure. These folks who come to buy the diamonds, they come here, they fly in the morning, they view, they make their decisions, and no sooner would they have finished than they are going to spend the night in Johannesburg. And they had come here. So how do we keep them here for a day, 2 days, 3 days? How do we then even take them from here, from viewing and making their decisions and purchases on diamonds to our tourist areas? Because they're already here. It's easier for them to go to the Okavango. It's attractive, it's appealing. So we need to find a way of ensuring that we link up all these sectors in order to have them come here and then go to support our tourism. That is one. Two, we also need to have associated or allied facilities for training. Botswana has mining. It has generated expertise. It has trained its people. And it has a lot of skill and expertise in mining, in metallurgy to offer to the world. So we need to locate those skills here and make Botswana the center for the world in relation to the acquisition of these skills so that we are able to benefit. So there's a broader array of aspects in which the concept of beneficiation could be deployed, not just in the narrow sense of cutting and polishing. Even in that narrow sense of cutting and polishing, we have not sufficiently developed the skills. The best in that area are not here. They're not even in India, they're in Russia. In the area
so
of
are
cutting
you
and
saying
polishing.
you also have to re-look at your relationship in terms of trade and investment with other countries?
Of course we need to, but the more important point is we need to develop our skills to cutting edge, to a level where the world will come here. When they want the best cut of diamond, the best stone, handled by our own people, the world should not want a Russian cut. They should want a Botswana cut. And that is a function of skills development. We need to invest more. So the issue of beneficiation is broader than just a geographic location. Bring people here and let them do this. It's, do we have the skills? Do we have the attendant environment that conduces to bringing many people in here? When you do that, you will then have a need to have direct routes, airline, you improve your surface transportation, you build bigger, better, smarter airports, not one, many. And so when you do that, you assist these people who come to buy diamonds to be able to access the rest of the country. But you also locate Botswana now as a haven and a gateway. People come here, they can then take off from here instead of maybe OR Tambo to go to other places in the world. And it becomes efficient, it becomes quicker, it's safe, it's stable. Now, the transition that we've just witnessed does a lot of things for the country. The first thing it does is it cements our place as a robust, tested democracy. It does this because in this instance, we had a party that had ruled for 58 years that did not expect to lose. By all accounts, all the analysts in this country and elsewhere were emphatic that the BDP was going to win. You go into the election. No sooner has the counting started than it becomes evident that the BDP is losing. What does a person who's sitting there and who has the power to affect the process even as it unfolds, what did he do?
He called you.
He assesses, he accepts. Now that's no small feat. He accepts that the democratic process is going in a particular direction. It does not occur to him that he can go against it. It doesn't. And this is critical because if we were saying, no, he called his security chiefs, he did an assessment and they told him it would not be good. No, none of that happened. The person himself is sitting there, sees what is happening, and it comes naturally to him to understand that what this means is there will be a new president at the end of this process. He reaches out. He talks to that prospective president, that potential president, and he says, congratulations, your party seems to be doing very well. You seem poised to win. We are still hopeful that we may bounce back, but congratulations all the same. That is a powerful, evocative statement and act about the substantive quality and depth and strength of Botswana's democracy. And this has happened. And it goes on through, the counting is going on. In the evening, he calls. The counting has not been finished. It will finish around the afternoon of the next day. But the pattern is emerging. He says, I can see how it is developing. It hasn't reached there yet, but I will concede. I want to assure you that I will readily concede. What kind of person behaves like this? A person who's steeped, who's entrenched in the values of democracy. And it goes on. The following morning, before it is concluded, he goes and he concedes. So what this must tell the world, and I believe it has, because now the world's attention has been drawn to this country. It says there was never any doubt. All the anxieties, the dread, and fear that anybody may have harbored or nursed was without any meaningful basis. Here is a country that accepts seamlessly. And this goes, the president has conceded, everybody now, and he says himself that I had to counsel some of my members. Some of them broke down. I had to tell them that this is this is democracy. So you must respect, and respect deeply, a person who behaves like this. And it goes on. He doesn't impede. He doesn't obstruct. He hands over. He makes himself available. I was with him yesterday. We talk. I'd called him in the morning, wish him well, and tell him I look forward to seeing you at the inauguration. He was there, and we had a chat together. So it says to the investor, you are safe investing in Botswana. Change of government does not affect your circumstances. This republic is bigger than individuals who happen at any moment in time to be its leaders. So this is a powerful statement.
Mr. President, still on the issue of diamonds, in terms of the talk, the issue of the shareholding, there was a proposal in terms of changing of the shareholding structure with De Beers, or now I can say those who have taken over De Beers. Do you agree that you have to change the agreement?
Look, the agreement is being discussed now. The shareholding in De Beers, as we sit here, is 15% held by the government of the Republic of Botswana and 85% held by Anglo in all its other shape and formations. If, and in any corporate or commercial setting, Botswana wants more shares, it obviously will approach the majority shareholder and say, we are ready to buy. Let's do a valuation. We want to buy 30% of your shares.
Why buy?
Buy because this is the shareholding. It's proprietary. The 85% shareholder is a property holder. These shares, incorporeal property that they are property. So if you want to acquire somebody's property, you've got to pay compensation. That's what the constitution of this republic says. That's what property law dictates. So you're going to have to go to them and engage.
Are you going to do
with
that?
A view to? That's a different proposition altogether. The real proposition right now is Anglo has taken a decision that it wants to sell its shares or demerge its operations. One, are we able to buy? If we want to buy, then there's nothing that stops us. Why? Because we have a right of first refusal. Do we have the money to buy? That's the question. Has a valuation been made which is reasonable and fair and commercially sound? That's another question. But critically, the value of De Beers, without any doubt, is dependent on the existence of a contract between itself and the government of Botswana. So we need first to anchor that property, which is De Beers, which is the mining, by concluding the contract between it and the government of Botswana. As matters stand, there are a few outstanding issues which could not be resolved until the previous regime left. We are in the process now, and we've made overtures. We want those issues resolved at the earliest. If we could resolve them by the end of this coming week, it would be excellent. Because if they are not resolved, they pose an existential threat to Botswana in terms of its revenue earning capabilities. So we are alive to this. We are engaging actively with our partners in De Beers to address these issues and address them as quickly as possible. So we will. In my brief encounter with the delegation from De Beers, Anglo, yesterday, we both expressed a commitment to resolving these issues as quickly as possible. And a resolution, and I'm not being overly presumptuous or preemptive, may result in a situation where our own shareholding increases. It is one of the issues on the table, but obviously the negotiation process will resolve. You still have
to negotiate. Yeah. Let's move to another thorny issue. As neighboring countries, we do have challenges at times because we have different levels of development, particularly when you look at the GDP and the opportunities. The issue of Zimbabwe, at some point in time, you spoke about giving Zimbabweans the necessary documents to be in Botswana. Can you really explain that? I'll tell you why. This issue of movement of people is causing a tension, not only in our region, around the world. Migration has become so problematic, and the immigration laws, because the citizens of respective countries are fighting for resources with some who are not from that country. The issue of Zimbabwe.
Yeah. We've got to approach the issue of Zimbabwe somewhat dispassionately. Leave our emotions out of it and deal with the facts. What are the facts? The facts are there is, without any doubt, an influx of people from Zimbabwe into Botswana. They end up taking up the most menial of jobs. As a matter of fact, many of the jobs that they end up taking are jobs that our own people are not desirous. There's no serious appetite on our citizens for these jobs. And there's nothing wrong with not liking a particular job. And therefore, when an opening arises, you're not interested. But we also must acknowledge that there will be somebody else, either out of desperation or whatever reason, who will be interested in taking this job. And so that person comes in without any doubt. How did this person come in? They came in illegally. But they are doing the job. They are already here. What do? We can choose to spend money and send this person back. The moment you leave this person at the border, they cross back, and by the evening they are here. So are we succeeding? No. How then do we deal with this situation? We could deal with it and when they are illegal like that, because they are hiding, they end up involved in crime. They end up exploited. And this exploitation makes it even more unappealing because they will take this job for next to nothing. And so the employers, those who have these jobs, who are hiring them, prefer them to citizens because the citizen will want more. So there is a demand for people who will work for a pittance. So they themselves are exploited. Why are they exploited? They are outside the protection of the law because in the first place, when they came in, they placed themselves outside the protection of the law. So we want to deal with this thing and say, let us allow you to come in legally. Then you contest for the job, however you do. You get the job. The employer, because they can no longer exploit you as an illegal, the employers are now forced to bargain with you for a better pay. And if the pay rises, then maybe the citizen will see that this job is paying more than it used to. I'm now interested. I want this job. Then there's some competition there. But you can only achieve that if you take the initial step of ensuring that they come here legally. This is not to go and invite and say, just come and run us over. No.
It means you are not saying open borders.
No. We're not saying that. We are saying we recognize the challenge. Let us deploy strategies and approaches that are appropriately fashioned to deal with so that they do not pose a security risk to us and to our people. Then they can be within the law. They can be controlled either by way of a temporary work and residence permit or a much longer term work and residence permit. We can control, we can manage them, we can account for them. Then we manage the situation. That is one part. The second is, at the same time, our people have not been given skills in sufficient numbers. We don't have enough electricians, artisans really. And so that is why if you go to any construction site in Botswana, 80% or more of the workers there are from Zimbabwe. It's a fact. And they have some of these skills that we have not cared perhaps or managed to impart to our own people. So one way of dealing with this is to address the skills deficit so that our people are available and they can step up. Then we are able to address this. But even more fundamentally, in the medium to long term, with a population of 2.4 million, an active workforce probably of about 300, maximum 400,000 active, unless you want to engage child labor or the aged. The active workforce will probably be in the region of 400,000. If we create the kind of jobs that we want to create in this economy, grow the economy and create jobs, then we will be able to absorb some of these without any difficulty. And rather than take a short-termist approach of hiding our heads in the sand, let us take a more proactive, sustainable approach of growing the economy, creating the jobs, ensuring the skills are available, they get absorbed in the economy. But those who can come in from outside and also give us skills that we need, we make it hospitable for them to come into our country. And we together build and grow the economy. This is the argument. And if you take it from, because the immediate former president was saying to me yesterday about this issue of people from Zimbabwe, people from Namibia coming in, one of the challenges on the African continent, we must admit, is the difficulties in free movement of goods and services. Services here, we mean even skills. Services, we mean people who come visit our country. A person from France carrying a French passport enters this country easily and goes. A person from some of these African countries, some of them have a lot of money. They want to come here. We have visas. It's a mess because we have the colonial hangover of being overly suspicious of other black people. So we need to grow out of this colonial hangover. If we give a person carrying an American passport, we give a person carrying a French or European passport free access, easy access. Let's give access. It is not unregulated. It is regulated. You come in. Right now, Russia decided people from Botswana no longer need visas. Come in, if you are from Botswana, we'll stamp your passport, we'll give you 90 days per year. It's a decision they took. Have Botswana relocated to go to Russia? No. People assume that other Africans want to run away from their countries and come and flood. Studies on migration, proper studies, have shown that that is not correct. People want to come and do whatever they do and go back. So if we manage it well and ensure they come in, they are documented, we know where they are. If you overstay, you know you'll be fined or you'll be arrested. They will behave. So this is how we can deal with the migration issues. We don't deal with the migration issues on impulse or on trying to visit recriminations on those who come. No. We understand the nature of the problem. We find appropriate solutions backed by evidence, and then we do exactly that.
Let's look at, you are now leading this country, and there are reports that there are allegations of corruption and how other people conducted themselves. How are you going to approach this issue? Are you going to hold people accountable?
It's not even a question of am I, as if I have a choice not to. The legal framework in this country is that whoever engages in corruption is operating in violation of the law. The issue then becomes, are we able to detect? Are we able to process those violations? And are we able to secure appropriate action, either by way of conviction or seizure of the properties or proceeds of those crimes. This has been done. Maybe the demand is do more. So if there's more, then more must be done. And there's no question about it. It's not even whether I want or I don't want. The way it becomes troubling is when it is expected that we should be vindictive. There's no vindictiveness.
It's accountable.
There's no vengeance. It applies to us in the same way as it applies to everybody. If any person in this new government engages in corruption, they must face the consequences in the same way that anybody who has before must face the consequences. And so that is not a matter for debate. What is for debate is, do we have the trail? Do we have the evidence? Then we take it forward. So that, I think, is the nature of the question there. Not whether I want to go after. I don't want to go after anybody. But anybody who has engaged in corruption, I don't have to decide to go after it. The law must go after any and every person who has engaged in corruption.
As we wind up or wrap up, let's look at global issues. The war in Ukraine, the Middle East, now you being a head of state. These are some of the issues that you'll have to participate in at multilateral level. What would be the role of Botswana, particularly in relation to foreign policy on these matters?
Our foreign policy is governed by the protection of the interests of Botswana. That is the main driver of our foreign policy. And in protecting these interests, we will engage with others, and our engagements with them will be determined by the extent to which a mutually beneficial relationship in which our interests are secure can be achieved. And any country, a relationship with which would jeopardize our interests, we will be loath to engage with such country. But we don't have any preconceptions about anybody. We have clear requirements and demands in relation to what our interests are. And any country with which we can cooperate to serve our interests, and in so doing, we are not inimical to theirs, and they are not inimical to ours, then there will be a proper bilateral relationship.
Let's look at South Africa. Currently, there's a standoff in relation to import of products from South Africa, the vegetables and the fruits. At some point in time, we were dealing with Namibia with meat. Have you looked at that issue? How are you going to resolve this issue? Because you get people from Botswana saying it has affected supply chain. You get people from South Africa saying it has affected business, and they are looking up to politicians to resolve these matters.
Yes, it's an issue that is capable of causing problems if it hasn't already. We are members of a customs union. There are certain rules and regulations governing members, parties to a customs union agreement. There's a dispensation there in which nascent industries are protected. There are guidelines, bright lines on how this protection is invoked. The question then would be whether Botswana, in doing what it has done, which is impose the ban, has operated in accordance with the requirements of the agreement and is protecting any nascent industry in accordance with the terms of the agreement. If that is not the case, then we need to go back to what the agreement provides. But aside from the agreement, we have a relationship, a neighborly relationship. South Africa is our trading partner. I think Botswana is South Africa's biggest trading partner. So we offer them a market. We, together with South Africa, will sit down and determine what our interests are, what their interests are, and how we can move towards each other and find some workable accommodation in terms of which we will agree. If there is a ban, because we want to protect an industry that is only emerging, this is how we want it done. And it is known and it is accepted. So if we act unilaterally, then we create a problem. If they act unilaterally, then they create a problem. So we need to come together and discuss, and that is what the customs union actually dictates.
It's almost dead.
Well, SACU is not dead. SACU revenues are being generated, except maybe the terms of the customs union are not being properly observed. That we will need to check, and that we will need to strengthen. If we need to renegotiate and improve in the context of the Africa Free Trade Agreement, in the context of envisaged trade relationships, tripartite between COMESA, between SADC and ECOWAS, then all these will have implications for the existing agreements. So we will need, and this is, it's part of engagements between nation states. We'll go to each other. We discuss and we say, we must resolve this. There's a problem. We don't know what the nature of the problem is. We need to sit together and agree how we handle this problem. I think between Botswana and South Africa, there's no shortage of capability to resolve these issues and resolve them amicably. And indeed, between Botswana, even between Botswana and Zimbabwe, if there's a niggling trade issue, we will discuss it and we will resolve it. So what is important, and this is what I keep raising, because I've said this government, this administration, this people's administration must be agile. It must be quick to realize there's a problem and to examine accurately, using evidence, the nature of the problem, diagnose, and then do a proper strategy and implement, evaluate, and make sure that the strategy works. If it doesn't work, change it. But we need to address problems in a manner that is proactive, that is agile. And so in relation to those, we're going to get off quickly to deal with all these problems and try and resolve them, because we need to build this economy. We need to turn it around and turn it around quickly.
You invited opposition parties in the SADC region. What was the reasoning behind it?
It's democracy. That's the reasoning. They are part of the democratic process. They are part of peacekeeping and the maintenance of peace and harmony in their respective countries. If they are not recognized, if they are not appreciated as part of the democratic process, then we are creating a situation for other than democratic means of accessing power. So once you have them come and they realize we are part of this, we are the opposition, we are now in power. Other countries must realize at some point the opposition will be in power. Do you want to have angry people, vengeful people because you abused them, come into office and start doing the same to you? No, there's no need to abuse each other. Even aside from political competition, there's no need. So we need to appreciate all of them, appreciate the ruling parties as well as those who are aspiring to rule, because they will be in power one day. And there's nothing better than having all of them at one table laughing, and then they go and compete.
And finally, Mr. President, we saw this change in Lesotho, in Malawi, in Mozambique. No, not Mozambique, in Zambia,
Yes.
in Kenya. The question people are asking is, how are you going to ensure that the expectations of Botswana are met? Because you see a person coming in with all the promises, particularly from the opposition, and 2 years down the line, the nation is disappointed. How are you going to ensure that you don't disappoint not only Botswana, but the region? Because people in this region, on the continent, are looking at this story, Botswana, and are saying democracy has prevailed?
First, let me make it clear and be upfront about the fact that we will not disappoint. But to get to your question, see, the people who have these expectations are mature and sensible people. They appreciate the gravity of the problems that they face on a daily basis. They know what the solutions to these problems would be in the short, medium to long term. And they want these problems to be solved. That's the broad bottom line. They want these problems solved and solved quickly. We have laid out ambitions. We have put down an ambitious plan that has resulted in these promises and undertakings to the people. And the people have agreed. They know they want this. But because these people are mature and sensible, and because we appreciate that this mandate we hold is for them and on their behalf, we need, and I've said this many times, to play open cards with them. We need to be open, we need to be transparent with them. Tell them, this is the situation that we face. These are the resources at our disposal. These are the measures that we have initiated to try and increase the resources. And we expect that these measures will yield results in this manner. So with these resources available, we propose to address the following urgent matters while we prepare to address the rest. When you go to the people and you are honest with them, you are open with them, you make them see. Government is not a mystery. It's not run in secret. These people will themselves say, because of this problem, maybe let's suspend any increase. Let's take a salary cut. The people will say that because you have let them in. They see, you demystify power. And that's one of the things that I set out to do, to demystify power. Don't look at me as if I was a demigod and you approach me with a quizziness that you have when you are approaching a deity. I'm not a deity, I'm a human being, fallible like other human beings. So, I must tell you the truth. I must show you what the situation is, and we will thoroughly, accurately, professionally examine the situation. We examine it not because we want to go after anybody. We examine it, we audit the processes because we want to see how they have served us, and if they have, we maintain, and how they have failed us, and if they have failed, we improve. This is the whole purpose. So we will go back to the people, and I'll be delivering the state of the nation, which will be frank, brutally honest about our circumstances. But that will also have no vengeance, no vindictiveness. I'm not going to focus on punishing. I'm going to focus on arresting the situation and trying to find solutions of a durable nature so that we leave a legacy of a system that works, a system that is foolproof against all these imperfections, and one where when you walk away without maybe even having punished anybody or having gone after whoever by the law, not me, then you can have people say, but this was a massive improvement on what we had before.
And be able to invite the former leaders. We saw former President Ian Khama, we saw the former President
Festus
Mogae. We saw the former President.
Now we have three.
Masisi.
Yes. And President Masisi was telling me yesterday that I am actually the first post-independence born president of the country. And maybe I bring some good luck, therefore, to the country. I hope I do. I believe very firmly that I do, together with the people that changed this government for themselves, not for me. And I'll serve them. And we all will serve them to the best of our abilities. And we'll be guided by them. We'll work closely with them. We will not deceive them. We will not hide things from them. We will tell them the truth. And more importantly, we will maintain a closeness with them. They will feel, they need to feel that they are part of this. They need to feel us. They must not fear. People must not fear the government. It is the government that must fear the people. I have a sense of dread when I approach them because I have so much respect for them. I know the circumstances. And when I approach them with utmost humility, appreciating that these are the people that matter more than any other. And so I think if all of us in the political space dealt with each other this way, appreciated all this, respected the ordinary citizen immensely, then we would have peace and harmony and we would have progress in our continent.